Technicolor is a company, it's a color process. The company itself is 100 years old, celebrating its centennial this year.
The first very significantly commercially successful process was Technicolor. Technicolor was used for high-profile things like royal processions with specific Technicolor theaters. Alternating frames had different colors and your mind was expected to blend it together. Many people in the audience ended up with really bad headaches, but as a novelty, it worked. The foundation of Technicolor came out of a consulting company called Kalmus, Comstock, and Westcott that was founded by two MIT professors who had a company on the side and a very skilled technician. One of them had gone to London, seen Technicolor projected, came back with some samples, and said, I think we could do this a lot better. They were correct in that there was a market for motion pictures in color. What they didn't anticipate was that it would take them 15 years before they were really making money at it.
The full color spectrum can be reproduced from 3 color components. But for a motion picture color process, recording those 3 colors and getting them back on the print was just too complicated. Technicolor knew they had to get there, but they couldn't achieve that to begin with. They had to have what they called a step development process to get there. So before 3-color, Technicolor chose 2 colors, meaning they couldn't reproduce the full color spectrum. It was very limited. They used red and green, which prioritized Caucasian flesh tones and greens of trees and plants, but it meant they couldn't reproduce proper blues or proper purples or yellow even. If they tried to photograph some of those colors, it would just come out a muddy brown. So for the 2-color process, they needed a special camera. They were using black and white film inside the camera, but behind the lens was a prism which divided the incoming light down 2 parts and then filtered it. One path was filtered red and one path was filtered green. So the actual film negative in the camera recorded 2 frames, one above the other but vertically flipped, so one was upside down.
They knew that they now had a viable color process. No producer would make a film in it because no one had yet seen a commercial film in this new Technicolor process. So Technicolor created a separate corporation, raised capital, and made their own film in this new improved Technicolor. And that film was called Toll of the Sea. The film is mostly exteriors and has a lot of Chinese costumes and other things which give both a kind of texture to the story and a lot of visual interest. The story itself is basically Madame Butterfly told in modern day. And it's also of interest because it's one of the very, very few Hollywood films that has an Asian American actress as the lead, top billed over the leading man. And the film was really a success. Technicolor's challenge was that the prints cost too much. But they learned a lot through making that film, and then they were able to use that and its commercial success to go to the commercial companies, studios, and say, we can do this for you too.
Some of the big surprises we got from doing our research was just how many films were made in 2-color Technicolor during those first 20 years. The count we currently have is about 384 titles. We thought maybe there were 100 when we started our research.
Technicolor also recognized that color was a good way to communicate areas of the world that people had never seen before. Some of the films that were shot in the American Southwest, where their green and orange palette work very well. One of those films, which survives in a print from the Library of Congress, is Redskin, that was made by Paramount in 1928. And this one's interesting because it's not 100% color. All of the scenes on the Indian reservations are in color. All of the scenes in the white man's world are in black and white. And it's about the tension between those 2 worlds that are felt by the main character. You can see as they go through and they're showing the native crafts and the costumes that people are wearing, is that the costumes and the backgrounds were very well chosen to show off the color range that 2-color Technicolor could provide. And by that time, Technicolor had gotten to the point where they really had it down. They understood how the process worked, they understood its limitations, and they understood how to get the best out of it.
But Technicolor wasn't successful, didn't have its first year of profit until 15 years after it was incorporated, 1929, and it was the coming of sound that really made that happen.
They start working with the studios, putting in these short segments, musical numbers, in some of the early musicals like the Broadway Melody, and they're a hit. And Warner Brothers signs a contract with Technicolor to make musicals in full Technicolor. And Technicolor really doesn't have the capacity to support it, but they're able to use the contract with Warner Brothers to go to the banks and to get more money and to start building out their systems. All the other companies want in, but Warner Brothers has an exclusive contract for the cameras. Technicolor doesn't have the capacity, and Technicolor goes into overdrive in terms of building a new lab in California. They're building cameras, running around-the-clock shifts, and they can't even keep up with the demand from Warner Brothers because the need to produce more prints of the initial films. And all of that comes tumbling down a year after they started in the spring of 1930. They couldn't keep up the quality with all of that pressure. Also, the interest in musicals started to go away. By the time they had fixed all the quality issues, nobody wanted to use Technicolor anymore. A year and a half after the first Technicolor musical had come out. But they had better lenses, they had better printing, they had better color definition, the prints were a lot sharper, and it was all too late. So the Depression had hit. Color movies cost more to make, the prints cost more to buy. It didn't get you more audiences. Technicolor got to where they were making one color feature in a year, and the rest of their business was based on shorts and other things. They cut almost every expense. They closed the lab in Boston, laid off lots of staff, brought the remaining people to Hollywood, and focused on creating this three-color process. They showed it to Walt Disney. He was really intrigued, and he said he was going to make one of his cartoons in color, but he wasn't guaranteeing to exhibit it. It went in for a show of 2 weeks at the Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. And that was really the turning point for Technicolor. Cartoon production became color almost overnight. And at the same time, they were working to make live action films in 3-color.